Lord, thank you for today and for this class and for a fresh new quarter and for all the wonderful things that you're doing in our life and the steps forward that we're all taking together to prepare ourselves for the calling that you have given us and for the good works that you've prepared in advance for us to do, Lord. We thank you for those things. And Lord, I pray that today you'll guide our lesson, guide our hearts, help us to receive. And Lord, I pray that through this class that we'll be better prepared for the days ahead and that we'll know your word more clearly. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. All right, so I'm going to hand out the syllabus. I think a few of you already had some. So how many of you do we got here? 9? Okay. Jacqueline, do you have one yet?
Yes, I have one.
Do you have one? Syllabus. Do you have one? Karen, do you have one? No. Charles, do you have one? Nellie, do you have one? Tasha? Carol? And Judy. Okay. All right. So what I'll do, I'll go ahead, it's the first class, so this would be kind of a light, easy class. But what we're going to do, we'll start with going through the syllabus, see if you have any questions over that. Let me explain it to you, and then I'll take any questions. And then if we have time, we'll start in on our first lesson. All right, so the textbook for this class is this one here, right, Joshua. It's basically a commentary on the book where he's going to work from beginning to end, verse by verse, just kind of discussing his thoughts on the book. So this will be the text for this class. So go ahead and get started on your reading. If you'll notice on the syllabus, with just about every class that I do, I tend to not have many assignments due in the first half, as far as papers and things that you have to write. And your papers are more backloaded to the end, and that's intentional because the objective is for you to spend the first half of the class really focused on your reading, right? So that you're writing your papers out of the new information that you've learned throughout the class, as opposed to doing things right from the beginning, which would be just regurgitating what you already know if you haven't had a chance to learn much. So in the first beginning of most of the classes, the first several weeks, you won't have any papers due. There'll be a few discussion board things that we'll talk about, but you don't really have any of the papers due. So don't just only come to class. I mean, that's an option, but the reason is not just so that we can do nothing in the first half. It's so that you can focus on the reading in the first half. And so take advantage of that. That's why you don't have much. So it's not that you don't have much to do in the first half of the class. It's a different type of thing. It's reading first half, writing second half. Okay. All right. So if you notice that column that says Tuesdays, that just basically means on your own time, just be doing the reading. That's about all you need to do in this class on your own time, other than your assignments, is to make sure that you stick up to your reading and get your reading done. This book, you should be able to do this one over the course of the 8 weeks. It's only 200 pages. This should be one that you should definitely be able to knock out. And when you do, in week 7, you have a reading quiz, right? And so basically all you do is you log in to the website. Now we got a few new people, so Melissa will get you your password, right? So you just log in, and then at week 7, the quiz will become available. You just click on it, and then from that point, from the moment you click on it, you have 45 minutes, right? So if you pause it, come back, whatever, that doesn't work. It's still 45 minutes. From the moment you click it, that's it. We had one student that she would pause it, go find the answer, and then come back and press play, and she realized that doesn't actually work because it's still keeping the 45 minutes, right? So 45 minutes from the time you press play, so make sure you're in a place where there's no distractions or whatever so you can focus on your quiz. If you happen to have a problem, say you start the quiz and, the power goes out at your house, or, your kids go crazy, they get into some, sugar and they're running around the house. About the only thing I can do to make this fair, to keep it, because some people, not in this class, other classes, down the road, you could potentially see somebody abusing that, where they start off, they didn't really read the book, they failed the test, and they come back and say, oh, I was distracted, let me take it again. So what we've done instead is is I've given you an opportunity to write a 5-page paper if you bomb somehow, something happens with your reading quiz. And that's just designed so that no one will do that as a first option. But there is some grace that if something did happen, there is a way to still get points for that assignment. You do a 5-page paper on the book. But it's not anything that anybody would want to do, so nobody's going to intentionally skip the quiz, because the quiz is not designed to be tricky. The quiz is just designed to test whether you read the book. So it should be fairly straightforward things if you read the book, maybe a little bit of researching. It is open book. So the quiz is not intended to wreck you up and to be difficult. All right, so you'll notice your first things that you have to do are the discussion boards, right? So all you do on that is you log into the website, click on the discussion board thing within the class, and for every 2 weeks, I give you one question that you need to write a response to, right? And so you'll notice each of your other students' responses. And so the idea there is just to build a little bit of interaction between you and the other students outside of the class. It's not much, but I mean a little bit. So you're looking at 200 to 400 words. I always recommend maybe type it on Word or something like that so that you can see how many words that you have, and then just copy and paste it onto the website when you're done. That way you can use all your spell check and all that kind of stuff on your word processing program. And so it's due by the end of week 2 at midnight. So that Saturday at midnight is when it's due. Anything after that would be late. So, but I would encourage you, if you want, to do it a little earlier so that your other students can see your posts and that kind of stuff. All right. So let's go to week 6, and we're going to talk about the assignment that you have. So on the back page there, I give you the assignment. Now, your classes are either going to be one of 2 ways for the most part. Either I give you 2 kind of medium assignments or 1 larger assignment. Because, it's only a quarter class, it's 8 weeks. You don't have time to do too much. So in this particular class, it's just the 1 assignment. But so if it's 1 assignment, that means I expect it to be a little more thought out, spend a little bit more time on it. So you only have just the 1 paper to do for this course, and it's your outline. And so what I'm wanting you to do is to put together a comprehensive outline of the book of Joshua. And so in your outline, you can do it outline form. You remember Roman numeral, all that kind of stuff. You can do it in outline form, but I don't want just a sentence, right, for each entry. I would prefer a paragraph, right, where you're explaining it, because I don't want you to just go through and say, oh, this happened, and just write a sentence, and then this happened, and just write a sentence. I want you to be able to explain in your own words the event that you're including in your outline. Now, to get it to the right page, did I say 5 to 7 pages in that one? Yeah. So to get it to that page length, you obviously can't include everything in the book of Joshua. So there is a selection process that you'll go through. And so to me, that's part of the importance of the assignment, is you thinking through what is important to you and what do you think are the main issues that are going on in this book. And so that's how you should be thinking. So, and if you apply yourself that way and say, okay, I'm going to read through this book and try and find what are the important highlights that should be in an outline of this book, it will force you to think more critically about the book. It'll cause you to kind of really think about what you're reading and say, okay, is this valuable? Because not all scripture is important, so we don't want to say that. But for your understanding of the book, there are certain parts that will stand out more than others, right? Maybe some stories that take place may stand out to you a little more than the genealogies. Or in this book, the part that tends to get skipped over a lot is the distribution of the 12 tribes, their land, right? So in the book of Joshua, they take over the land, and about halfway through, before they actually had it all, they start getting to the place where they say, all right, we need to go ahead and divvy this up now, even though we haven't successfully taken all of it. And so they go through this process of distributing the land. And so that's important from a historical point of view, but maybe from a personal devotion life kind of reading, if you're reading the Bible in that way for like personal application, the genealogies and the distribution of the land and some of the laws of the Leviticus, sometimes those things don't really connect home sometimes. And so people have a tendency, if they're reading for the Lord to speak to them personally in that moment, they may skip right through some of that stuff. But from a more academic standpoint, looking at those, is really important, because you get a lot of really important foundational information from those sections. So anyways, it's up to you how you divide it. There is not a wrong way and a right way, but it is the process of doing this that's important, right? It is the process of trying to think through the different events that take place in that book that will cause it to stick in your mind, right? So as you go through the process of coming to an understanding of the book, right, and being able to say, okay, this took place there, this took place there, and in the process of going from one end to the other of the book and saying, okay, this looks important, I like this, I'm going to include this in my outline. And doing that will cause you to become familiar with the book, number one, what's in there, right, because you have to think about it so you'll understand the content. Secondly, this needs to be chronological, right, and so it will force you to understand the flow of events. This happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. Because you don't always get that on a Sunday morning sermon. Because typically, if somebody's going to preach out of the book of Joshua, they're only going to be able to preach out of one chapter, right? And so that day, you get that snapshot of that story, but that doesn't necessarily give you a good understanding of the flow of what happened in that book, because it's just one chapter that day. And then maybe the next time somebody preaches on Joshua, maybe 5 months later, and it could be before or after that, and so they're preaching on a story there. And so if all you're relying on is what you get on Sunday morning, then you don't get that feeling of continuity about the order. And that's really important, because to give you an example of the last class that we did Exodus, which is a very important class, or at least book for this class that we're going to do. And I'm going to talk about that today a little bit if I get a chance, is the connection between Exodus and Joshua. But to give you an example, the golden calf, right? We all know that story. Moses is on the mountain, Aaron's down in the valley. They make the golden calf. Everybody starts worshiping the golden calf. And so when you first take that, it's often that we tend to view that story as something that happens kind of towards the beginning, right? That here they are right off the bat, and then they fall into this idolatry. But that's Exodus chapter 32. That's almost the end of the book. Is when the golden calf takes place. And so Aaron had already been on the mountain and seen God with his own eyes, as the Bible says. In fact, the Bible, just kind of a side note since I'm talking about it, he brings them up on the mountain, the elders, Aaron and different ones, and they actually have a meal together, right? And so it doesn't exactly say what the meal is, but throughout the Bible, anytime they have a special meal, generally that has something somehow to do with Christ and communion, something, right? Abraham had a meal with Melchizedek of bread and wine, right? It's the communion story all the way through. So God brings Aaron and Moses and several of the others and many of the elders all onto the mountain, and they have this meal together. And the Bible says that in that meal, while they're eating that meal, they saw God. And he talks about him walking on what seemed to be pavement of sapphire, right? Like some kind of blue stone. And so the neat thing about that is, number one, just from a preaching standpoint, it shows that Jesus says that he who sees me correctly will see the Father. And I think it's kind of interesting that if they were taking the communion meal, that was the only reference in the entire Bible, other than maybe some of the things with the prophets, but theirs seemed more like a vision. Ezekiel says, I had a vision, and then he starts talking about what he saw in the vision. And so, but in terms of flesh and blood, anyone ever seeing the Father, other than Moses when it said he saw his back parts, the only other place that I can think of is right here where God brings these elders up, and they eat this meal, and it says they saw God. It doesn't say they saw an image of him. It doesn't say that. It says they saw God walking on the mountain, and they described what they saw. And so from a preaching standpoint, it's interesting that if it was a communion-style meal, that goes to show how Jesus says, if you see me, you see the Father. So the preaching point is that as they're having this meal that represents Christ, that is the first time that anybody sees the Father with their own eyes. But then the second point, which is what we're dealing with here about timeline and chronology, is that that after this, now Aaron has just seen God. Nobody else has ever done this before. They had just seen God. It doesn't say they saw an image. It doesn't say. It says they saw God walking on the mountain and they described what they saw, it was then that they went back down and Moses continued, right? And it was around then, after this point, right, after they had seen God, that they built the golden calf, right? And so that sheds a lot on the story. If you just have the image of the golden calf story in your mind, that's bad enough. But when you put it in the chronology of the whole story, that this happens later, after they've had their encounter with God, then they go, because sometimes you think, oh, well, they just didn't know any better. They're just coming straight out of Egypt. They hadn't really met God yet. Moses is the only one. He went up on the mountain. Aaron and them are just down there with no real encounter with God, and so they just built this golden calf. But that's not how the story went. Aaron had seen God with his own eyes, and the elders, it says, were up there too. And all of them come back down, and it's sometime after that encounter that they all give in to the people and go ahead and build this idol. And so that sheds light on the story that if somebody just read only the story of the golden calf, you don't get the story that happens a couple places before where they have this encounter with God. And so you don't get the full picture of how grievous it was that they did this until you read it all together. And so that's why if you're going to study a book like how we're going to do in this class of Joshua, that it's important to get not only the content, to know what happened in the stories, but to understand how they fit on a timeline so that you understand how they relate to each other, right? Okay. So that's the main thing for this class, is to put together your outline, right? So as you see here, you've got, at the bottom, it's got this breakdown of your grade percentage. So the outline is 30%. So that means if you don't do that, your best shot is a 70, right? You know, if you don't do that paper. So it's important. You can't pass the class without doing that paper, is how that's set up to do. All right, so the outline is important. The reading quiz is 20%. Attendance is 10%. And then, now, you know, attendance, we do two ways, because this is an adult school, right, for the most part. You know, everybody, you know, we don't have any high schoolers in here right now. Everybody here probably has jobs or is working in some capacity or has other things that they're doing. And so a lot of our students end up having stuff that comes up sometimes at night, and they can't come to the class. So when I grade you on attendance, it is a combination of your physical attendance, but if you had some reason that you couldn't come to the class and then you watch the video, then to me that's just as good, right? You understand? So it is a combination of the two. If you didn't come to the class and you didn't watch the video of the class that you missed, then I count that as a miss. But, you know, so for the most part, we want you to be in class any opportunity that you can. But we don't want, we want to be a school that fits with the needs of adult students. And so we have it set up that everything gets filmed so that if you do have something in life that comes up, job, kids, family problems, whatever it is, that there is a way for you to still, you know, participate in everything that you would have missed, right? Okay. And then the discussion boards, and then the final. So as of now, we will probably do the final online like we've done the last few quarters. We'll see. That's kind of like there's pros and cons to both. Because what we used to do was have you come in and do the final in person, and then we had kind of a fellowship party when everyone was done with their finals. And then we started doing the finals online through the website, where you'd log in, you'd have an hour to do your final, and you just do it from the house. And then we'd do the party that last night. What I ended up finding was several students would just, because there was no responsibility, it was just the party, they wouldn't come. And so then that's no fun for everybody else. You know, they come and they make all this food and they show up, and a lot of people didn't show up because they didn't have any school responsibilities that night. So as long as we can still do the final online and still have kind of our fellowship night at the end, because I think that's important for a small school. You know, we don't have some of the extracurricular things that a college would, where people are living on campus, but that interaction with other people is still important. And so so we want to maintain that. We want to maintain that that family-like atmosphere. And so part of that is having that end of the year kind of get together where we do, similar to the open house, where we just have a meal together and everybody just kind of talks, gets to know each other. That's important. So I would just, I think we're going to stick with the online because for a lot of you that's really convenient to be able to take your finals from the house. But so all I'm asking is if you can, still try and come to the social thing that we do at the end of the quarter, so that everybody still builds that continuity. All right. So any questions over the syllabus? Okay.
She wanted to know why mine's in color versus.
It wasn't in the budget. I'm sorry. It's no. I have a super fast printer, but it just won't do color, and so I got that one instead. It's a trade-off. It prints it 30-something pages a minute in exchange for no color.
For the discussion board in
Yep.
class, we're not doing recording.
Yeah, not this time. We may go back to that soon. If you can still do them if you want. You understand what I'm saying? Like you can still have that social part. I'm not going to count it off, but I'm not going to require it this particular quarter. I'm doing a test. So we'll see if you don't like that as much. If you'd rather have the response, But what I'm thinking is those that enjoy the response can still do it, right? But it's just not required anymore. So feel free to comment back and forth to each other's things. If Charles trashes you online, feel free to to respond back.
I like to respond to my own.
Right? Yeah.
That's a pretty good comment.
Yeah. So any other questions over the syllabus? Due dates, any of that stuff? So obviously this is week 1. And we have 8 weeks all the way through. And so what we do, since we don't do the final in week 8, the main reason I started doing that wasn't just convenience for you, because it's still going to take you an hour to do it, whether you did it here or whether you did it there. The main reason is that gives me a chance to teach a final week 8 class. It's not necessarily on the final, but it is still information that will be important to know. And so, because if we take that last week 8 and do the final, then I can't teach anything. But if you do the final in week 8 just at home on the computer, sometimes it gives us an extra week, which is pretty important in a quarter class, because this first class we could take the first half to do syllabus, and then if we take week 8 to do finals, then it really puts us down to about only 6 weeks. So this way we can kind of get an extra week of teaching in. Okay. All right. So any other questions over anything? Yeah.
The discussion boards are by Saturday night of the week they're posted, and online by Thursday. The assignment by Thursday.
So the papers, yes. So any papers that you have are due on Thursdays by midnight of that Thursday that it's due, right?
Reading quiz and the final by Saturday.
And the reading quiz, yeah. So the reading quiz will open like on a Sunday of that week, and it'll be open all week. And then the assignments, though, are due on a Thursday of each week. Okay. So the reason I do that on the Thursday instead of the Tuesday is if it comes down to the last minute and you still haven't finished it, you have that Tuesday class right before it's due that you could ask me a question about it, right? If I have it due on Tuesday, then you have to be prepared with your question a week ahead of time. And sometimes with busy schedules and stuff like that, people have not gotten that far into their paper until a few days before. It's just human nature. A lot of times the pressure of getting close causes you to sit down and do it because we're all trying to manage time and responsibilities, and not everybody has the ability to do these things 2 or 3 weeks in advance. Sometimes we're doing them the week of. And so we want to make sure the day of. Yeah, hey, listen, it happens. I know. And so.
Tuesday, nobody would show up in class.
Yeah, that's true. The other thing, you know about John Dewday. He's the one that discovered Dewday disease, and it affects a lot of students. That they all seem to get it on when something's due. But so the idea is, if it's due on a Thursday, you're going to be in class 2 days before it's due. You could ask any last-minute questions, plead for grace, submit bribes, whatever you plan on doing on Tuesday is fine. Okay, so any other questions over that? Anybody?